There really are winners, no winners rather, in college sports this season because 2020, of course, many schools didn't even try playing during the pandemic. It's been the big money schools and sports have tried. So Duke coach Mike Krzyzewski has had enough. He's canceling non-conference games and sending players home for some rest. And we're
This
joined
is
now.
truly an incredible time, and has been, for our country, and it's at its worst time right now, and and making sure that we're doing the right thing for our players, just for safety. We're not going to play any non-conference games. We're not going to try to reschedule. We're also going to allow our team to go home for Christmas. It may not, they won't be there for Christmas Day, but these kids they need to be with their families for a little bit at least. For our fans out there, these kids go through a lot, and then they're not paid employees, and we need to take care of them.
A great deal of empathy from Coach K there. So we're now joined by college basketball reporter Brendan Marks, who covers all things Duke for The Athletic. Brendan, thank you for joining us today. So we heard Coach K be very vocal about this week, about the concerns for his staff and his players, of course. How did Duke come to this decision to forego their non-conference games?
Yeah, everyone, I think, is obviously Coach K's comments sort of carry a massive weight in the world of college basketball. But what he's saying outwardly now is nothing that hasn't been discussed privately behind the scenes for some time now. If you'll remember, going back to March at the onset of the pandemic, Duke was the first school to actually bow out of the NCAA tournament. Before the entire event was canceled, Duke unilaterally said, we are not going to play. For the safety of our team, this is not the best decision for us. And that's considering a team that he had that had true national championship ambitions. So to do that, I think really set a precedent for how Duke was going to handle this whole ordeal. And over the summer, Coach K has talked at length about delaying the start of the season until January when there was a better hope for a vaccine. He's talked about that there isn't a necessity to have the same non-conference schedule that we've had in the past. And Duke's scheduled season opener, or adjusted schedule opener, I should say, against Gardner-Webb was canceled about 2.5 weeks ago. And these talks about the value of a non-conference schedule really picked back up then. So it's been a decision that's been in the works for some time now. And eventually, I think the state of cases, especially here locally in North Carolina, has gotten to a point where it at least begs asking a bigger question about what are we really doing here right now? And so I think that's what he's doing at this point.
And to that note, Duke was the last ACC team to return to school this summer. It was clear that they're taking very careful measures. Walk us through some of the safety measures that they're taking to keep players and staff as safe as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned bringing athletes back latest. The ACC cleared all of its member schools to start bringing back athletes for voluntary workouts on June the 1st. And I was able to speak to a couple of player parents last night when this decision was first announced. And they all said, that may have been what the ACC told schools, but Duke was never on that same page. Duke was always going to be the last ones to bring kids back so that they could have all their protocols ironed out properly. And so Duke brought kids back on August the 2nd. And since then, so, 4.5 months now, these players have essentially lived in one of two buildings. They are staying in an on-campus, it's very near to campus hotel, the Washington Duke Inn. And that's where they have about half their meals. It's where they sleep. It's where they spend all their free time. And when they're not there, they do everything else in their lives at the basketball offices. They have a virtual classroom set up. They get grab-and-go meals from the cafeteria. They're not allowed to eat with each other. They do all of their practices and workouts and weightlifting sessions, obviously. But as soon as they're done with those activities, they go back to the hotel, and that's where they stay for really the rest of the night. So you're talking about a situation where 18 to 22-year-old kids, in the prime of their need for socialization, are essentially locked in their rooms every waking hour. So it's a really tough situation in terms of their mental health. And I think that's one of the main drivers behind why Coach K is making this decision. He senses the mental fatigue from his players. Obviously, it's not just his, it's nationwide. but he's trying to come up with a way to hopefully alleviate some of that burden they've been feeling.
And it's a really empathetic way Coach K is going about leading this team. He's definitely leading by example. Tell me, though, in the about a minute that we have left, does this set a precedent for other schools and other sports programs at other colleges?
I think it very well might. You know, as we said, back in March, Duke was sort of the ones leading the charge in this whole issue and saying, you know, and when it comes to safety versus the season, what's more valuable? And so I think you are going to see more schools start to have these conversations publicly, privately. And I wouldn't at all be surprised if Duke, the ACC at large, and NCAA overall sort of come to a different evaluation of where is this season going and what's really reasonable to expect.
Very well said. Hopefully the players and staff are well rested and ready to play when they return. Thank you so much for joining us, Brendan.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.